What if the darkest moments of your life weren't punishments, but invitations? What if every breakdown was actually a breakthrough waiting to happen? Welcome back to Awaken Your Authentic Self. I'm Jessica Rooks, and this is the sacred space where soul-led seekers, spiritual empaths, and truth tellers come to rise into their fullest expression. Today, we are having a conversation that I believe will shift something fundamental in you, because we are talking about the things most people whisper about in the dark: the burnout that won't quit, the spiritual hunger that logic can't satisfy, the feeling that you've outgrown your own life but don't know what comes next. And we're going deep with someone who doesn't just teach this work, she's lived it. Multiple brushes with death, the loss of a soulmate, open heart surgery, a complete life unraveling that became a complete spiritual rebirth. My guest today bridges worlds, literally. She's a spiritual counselor, intuitive coach, and psychic medium who works with high-functioning soul-aware people who are secretly struggling. People who look like they have it all together on the outside, but are quietly asking, is this really it? What am I actually here for? Laura Hooweg is the founder of Spirit Speaks to Me, and she's known for three things: uncanny accuracy, deep compassion, and zero fluff. Her clients call her the real deal, part therapist, part seer, part no BS soul whisperer. Laura's spiritual journey began at age 11 when she went searching for God and the angels, not in churches, but in nature, in whispers, in visions. At 15, a profound out-of-body experience cracked her wide open, and from that moment, she knew she was here for something bigger. She walked away from a 30-year advertising career, survived early COVID-19 and open heart surgery, and emerged with a gift for helping others navigate their own dark nights. She works closely with her spirit team, angels, guides, and masters she calls the Guardians. And together, they help people release energetic blocks, reconnect with their purpose, and finally, stop self-abandoning. Laura, welcome to Awaken Your Authentic Self. I am so grateful that you are here.
Well, thank you, Jessica. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, I'm very excited to have you here. But before we dive in, I just want to say your journey is extraordinary. And I know our community is going to feel so held by your wisdom today. So let's begin. Laura, you've survived multiple brushes with death, walking away from a 30-year advertising career, losing your life partner, contracting early COVID-19 and open heart surgery. Can you take us into one specific moment during those dark nights when you heard spirit most clearly? What did your guardians show you that fundamentally changed how you guide others through their own unraveling?
Well, it's really interesting. They just took me to an event, which you didn't mention in the intro, which I find very interesting because I've talked about a lot of those things before. I'm going to talk about something I haven't talked about in a very long time. Actually, I'm not even sure I've ever really talked about it this openly.
Oh, let's
But when
do
I
it.
was in my early 20s, I went through a different kind of dark night of the soul. I had a lot of really brutal things happen to me. I got involved unknowingly with a guy that was actually a true psychopath.
Mm,
And once I discovered who he was, trying to get away from him. And from that experience, I went into what can only be called like a deep depression.
mm-hmm,
And so, of course, as usually happens, the doctors threw a prescription at me, and it was antidepressants. And you got to love on the label when it says one of the side effects is this might cause suicidal thoughts.
Oh,
So
it's one of
they're
my
giving,
favorites. Absolutely.
what are your favorites? And this
Mm-hmm.
is supposed to be
Medical remedy. Mm-hmm.
a medical remedy, yes. But anyway, I was falling deeper and deeper into the depression, and I didn't do this intentionally. But it might have been guided on a subconscious spiritual level because of what actually came out of it. But what happened is I was really depressed and I was taking my prescription. And you kind of think, oh, if I take another one, I'll feel better. I know I'm only supposed to have taken two, but maybe I'll take another one. And over the course of a few hours, without even really clearly realizing it, I had actually taken very many, many pills, not all at once, just of course one at the time, because one more won't hurt, one more won't hurt.
Right.
And then I finally started feeling very strange, and I realized that I had, over the course of several hours, more than several hours, 4 or 5 hours, taken basically half the bottle.
Wow.
And yeah, it was pretty scary. And I realized that I needed to do something because I was I was basically like totally stoned out, and my breathing was weird. And then of course I reread the bottle, and I'm like, oh my God, what have I done?
Right.
And at that point, being also very young, because I was in my very early 20s, I was probably 21 or 22, maybe at the most. I became absolutely filled with shame, and I thought, I can't call the doctor, I can't call an ambulance. What am I going to do?
Right.
And I just flopped and laid on my bed, and all of a sudden, I heard my guides and angels so loudly. This is one of the things that I experienced was literally I could hear them in my head saying, to sleep is to die, to sleep is to die, to sleep is to die.
Wow.
And they just kept chanting this like a mantra. So I got up, and I had a very small studio apartment at that point. And I mean, it was really tiny. And I literally walked in a small circle, which was the full extent of my tiny little studio apartment.
Right.
For probably about 12 hours.
Wow.
I also, being totally logical and somewhat mental person, decided that I needed to eat some stuff to sort of, diffuse this medication that I had in my body, because it was way too late. Like I couldn't throw up or anything like that. It was already in my bloodstream. So I did all these things, and they were right. If I had stayed laying on the bed and if I had gone unconscious, we wouldn't be having this conversation today.
So scary.
But that's one of the things that proved to me that they always had my back in my deepest, darkest hour.
Right.
And, and it wasn't even intentional, but I think it was, how do I put this? It wasn't intentional on my part, but I think it was a lesson that I needed to learn in trusting my guides and my own intuition and realizing how powerful I was.
Right.
Because I would be willing to bet, and my guides have told me this several times, that most people wouldn't have survived that event because they would have simply laid down, given up,
And
fallen
went to sleep. Right.
Yeah, died. So that was a real eye opener for me, and it changed the way it changed the way I looked at myself, and it changed the way I looked at life, because through that experience, I also realized that I had as hard as the situation I was going through, I wanted to live. I had a powerful, powerful, I don't even know what the word to use, a powerful calling, a powerful essence within me.
Right.
Of wanting to preserve my life, that life was something very important and not something to be thrown away.
That is so powerful. I know my first experience with real guidance came with my last toxic relationship. And I mean, literally in the middle of an argument after 2 years of back and forth. And I was, at the top of my lungs because of something stupid, of course, he had said and done. And I literally, and I say this, I feel like I was smacked. I feel like somebody smacked me because my eyes opened. I stopped yelling. I looked at who I was yelling at and said, what am I doing? And
Yeah.
I kept hearing, you're better than this. You're better than this. You're better than this. And I just looked at him and said, oh my God, you're not worth it. Like, you are not worth what I've been going through. And I grabbed all my stuff and I left and I never looked back. And after that is when I started receiving and trusting my messages and downloads as well. And yeah, he was a stalker and everything. So that is let's just say what you just shared right now, it leads very beautifully into something I know that my audience struggles with. In your recent interviews, you've emphasized distinguishing fear-based thoughts from true intuitive guidance. For someone who's conditioned their whole life to override their inner knowing, maybe through religious programming or people pleasing, what is the first tangible practice that you give them to start recognizing their soul's voice versus their wounded ego? Okay.
Well, the biggest thing that I always tell my clients is that spirit never speaks to us through fear-based negative words or thoughts. So if you only ego does. So if you're experiencing something and it's very negative or very fearful, you know that that's not coming from your higher wisdom or your guides. So immediately you know that's coming from your ego. So you know that you have to let that go. When your guidance speaks to you, whether it's your own intuitive guidance or whether it's coming from your guides, it's always loving and encouraging or saying something like, don't give up. I was talking about when they were telling me to sleep is to die, to sleep is to die. It's always something that is going to preserve you, uplift you, or make you feel loved.
I love that. I do. And I've actually shared this story with my listeners before. There was a point where my car had a light on, one of the little warning lights. And I kept thinking, it's just a little sensor. I'll get it taken care of when I get my oil change. And when I bring my car in, the guy looks at it, and of course his eyes go all the way up and goes, do you have the extended warranty on this? And I was like, I should. He looks into it and I don't. As soon as he comes out and he tells me what the problem was, and he goes, well, it's a sensor, but it's under your seat and it's going to take $10,000 to fix it. My heart immediately dropped. But as soon as it dropped, I received a message and it said, it's taken care of. Do not worry about it. Let it go. And I just, I took a deep breath and said, okay, I'm just going to let that go. Where do we go from here? And he started to tell me. And an hour later, I'm in the waiting room, in the waiting area. My boyfriend calls and he's like, what's going on with the car? And as soon as I started to tell him, I hear the message all over again. Do not worry about it. Let it go. And I said, I can't talk to you about it right now. I got to let it go. He was like, okie dokie. An hour later, the guy comes over and pulls me aside, and turns out that the person who sold me the car and should have given me the warranty, didn't give me the warranty, had been guilty of stealing money from the dealership. So they decided to just pay for it for me.
Wow.
I was like, holy, but I know that had I stressed over it, like most people would do, I would have probably not had the same outcome. But I had trust and faith, just listening to them, and you just let it go. You have to listen and have trust that, like you said, they're going to guide you in the right direction. They're not going to give you negative advice.
No. And you talk about if you'd been gone into fear and all that craziness, that can actually block good things coming into your life. So I always tell people, I don't care what's happening around you. You need to stay centered within you, and you just can't let those things make you crazy.
Exactly. Now, Laura, you've mentioned that your guides are showing the world will change more in the next 10 years than it has in centuries. And you're helping people align with this new earth frequency. For someone listening who feels the pull towards something bigger but is terrified to leave their secure life, what's the bridge between where they are now and stepping into their divine mission?
Well, the bridge is discovering your authentic self. And because you can't really find your path unless you understand and know who you really are. And that's the biggest thing. And we find that we discover our authentic selves through our own healing and our own inner work. So there's nothing, I always say, who said this? And I can't remember who said it, but somebody said, if you want the world to change, be the change,
Right.
or something to that extent. And it really is about you, about getting in contact with yourself. See, there, it just got confirmed.
I love confirmations. Absolutely.
That was funny. Yeah, and that's what people don't really understand, because the unfortunate thing is, from the moment we are born into this world, we are bombarded with all kinds of hypnotic and downright brainwashing,
Right.
because we're told by parents, we're told by family, we're told by religions, cultures, advertising, schooling, all these different things, who we should be instead of who we really are. We're never really taught to know ourselves.
Right.
We're basically taught to see ourselves as others want us to be, including our parents. Okay. And you could have the most loving parents on earth. But unfortunately, because we're all human, really what our parents are telling us to be is always, almost always, a version of what they want us to be.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not doing this necessarily in a negative, from a negative space. But unfortunately, that doesn't allow, like, I see the whole way children are going to be raised in the future
Right.
is going to change incredibly, because in order to change the human race, we have to change who we are. And it's got to start at the very beginning, and it's got to start with children. No longer can we as humans wait till we're basically middle aged
Right.
to start truly healing ourselves. And that's what's been happening. If people heal at all, usually it's not till sometime in middle age when they really start discovering who they really are, and that's way too late.
I was
That's great
55.
for, yeah, it's great. That's what I mean. It's great for, there's nothing wrong with these past couple of generations that have done that. At least they've gotten to that space. But if we really want to change this world into the kind of world that we're talking about, that needs to start from ground zero, which means as soon as we come into this world, even I don't want to get into this in too much details, but even the way literally we are birthed into the world, the birth process that we the so-called modern society
Mm-hmm.
have created, actually traumatizes babies. I read an article recently, and it was really interesting. It was talking about the birth trauma because of the way that we go through, we put women through labor and babies through labor, um, is actually causing, to a great degree, the vast epidemic of ADHD, and all these traumas are actually coming um, from the birthing process.
I believe that.
Yeah, and as soon as I heard it, I knew it to be truth. I've never thought of it in that way until I read this article,
Right.
and I thought, oh, that makes so much sense. Because, well, at least in the Western world, let me
Right.
clarify that, okay? Because women were never meant to be on their backs laboring to
Right.
have a child. It's bad for the baby and it's bad for the woman. It's been done that way because it was convenient for the doctors.
Right. Absolutely.
So this is another thing, and just the way that the whole birth process works is very, very bad for our mental, emotional, energetic, even our physical bodies. That's why there's such a growth industry in infant chiropractics,
Right.
because these babies are brought into the world through this process, and they have been damaged, physically, mentally, and emotionally and energetically because of the process that they went through. That's why I'm glad to see this start happening, that so many people are going into healing on infants, like very newly born. I'm talking sometimes days and weeks after birth.
Right.
But that's not the root of the problem. The root of the problem is the process that we've allowed to develop.
Hearing you say that makes me really wonder if, and I'm pretty sure it's true. I mean, I grew up and I used to see spirits, and of course, life blocks you because you start to get into the everyday, and it just blocks you, and you shut things off, that you don't listen to the guidance as you should. But I really, really wonder if they were always talking, and on some level I really was listening on a soul level, because even like when I was expecting my children, I refused to see a regular MD. Most of my life I wouldn't even see a regular MD. I wanted to see like a naturopathic doctor, or somebody,
Naturopathic, yeah.
right, somebody who was going to actually invest time in me as a person, as well as whatever I was going on. And during my birthing process, he had me in like a squat position.
Yeah.
He had me in a more natural, where it was less
Well, that
stressful on
was the
me
way
and less
it's
stressful
always
on
been
him.
done,
Right.
to be honest. And if you go back to even some of the more indigenous cultures now, they're still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way children are brought into the world. Because if you look at it even from a physics point of view, if you want to get
It
technical,
fell right out.
yeah, it's like it's not hard, And like I said, it's all been done to make it easier for the doctors, and modern medicine,
Right.
the techniques that they're using in so-called modern medicine.
Oh, I
But
laugh. I say,
you know,
I feel like I never even pushed them out. I said, literally, the first one was 5 pushes. The second one was like 2 or 3. And I feel like they just slid
yeah.
right out.
Well, because that's the way it's supposed to be. Isn't it amazing when you do things the way that they're meant to be done, how easy they are?
Exactly.
You see, this is the other thing. If we were actually okay, so it starts at birth, and then there's all the traumas and brainwashing and crazy stuff that goes on, basically 0 to, let's even just say 0 to 5. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention when we actually get into school.
Ugh, that's a whole
Okay.
other story.
but,
Mm-hmm.
but that's a whole other story. But all the things that happen in the way that children are, you know they're forced to be learning things and doing things, certain things that are way because of this, ego state of parents, and in a lot of cases, way before it's the natural time for them to be integrated and learn those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
And all these things cause, you know you want to talk about multi-layer trauma. Oh my goodness.
Right.
It surprises me that anybody that gets to adulthood can actually still function, because of there's so many layers of this stuff. And that's not even including, any of the major other traumas. I'm just talking about if you lived in what I call, there's not too many of them, but there are a few, Disneyland families where there's no other trauma. Okay. I'm talking about divorces,
Right.
sexual abuse, you know, alcoholic parent, all the things that so many people have to endure.
Right.
Even if you're talking about basically the Disneyland version, these kids are still being multi-layer traumatized because of the way that we've been taught and shown that we are supposed to bring up children. And the other side of the coin is the biggest problem. I'll tell you a secret. That I've only learned in probably the past 5 or 6 years. I actually had knowledge of it before,
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't sure it was true. And as that happens so often, I asked my guides about it, and they said, figure it out.
Sounds like me. Just Google it.
Yeah, you figure it out. Because when it's stuff for me personally, they tend to do that. And then I have to figure it out, and I have to come back to them and get it confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
They will always confirm it for me, but they won't always tell me without me working on it. Anyway, the quick story is the universe doesn't consider us mature adults until we're 35 years of age, approximately.
It's
Okay.
interesting.
So yeah, it's so interesting. And I the reason I started looking into this is because I had some pretty interesting and profound things happen to me around the age of 35.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, this is interesting. And then I had some interesting things through my mediumship work, because people on the other side, they can either show themselves to me at the age that they passed,
Mm-hmm.
or they can show me themselves at any age they want to. Okay.
Okay.
And 99.9% of the time, if they're not showing me themselves at the age they passed, they show me themselves around the age of 35. And I went, how come this keeps happening? Those are the two things that triggered me. I knew that there was something very special about that age around the 35. So that's how I found this out. But the point being, if you look at the age of people having children for hundreds and hundreds of years, it's basically been children having children.
Right.
Okay. This is a huge problem. And the reason that that's happened, well, in the, way back, it was because people were lucky if they lived till 40, but that's not now for sure.
Right.
But the problem still is of both male and now, I was going to say female fertility, but now there's so many problems with male fertility. It's unbelievable. That's a whole nother topic.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, most people were having their children in their 20s or at the very best early 30s. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Most people. So here you have again children raising children.
Right.
And this is the
And they don't
problem.
know themselves.
Yeah. And the other side of that is way back when we lived in multi-generational families, it wasn't so bad because you had parents, grandparents, and in a lot of cases, sometimes even great grandparents. There were also and aunts and older aunts and uncles and all this extended family to help raise these children. Well, that just doesn't happen these days.
Right.
Families are so fragmented. Families are living like all over the world away from their nuclear family. So basically, parents, children, okay,
Right.
are left to raise their children on their own. And this is very bad. This has created a huge problem.
My own mother was 17 when she gave birth to me. And I say it all the
There
time.
you
When
go.
my father was 19. And I'm like, I am literally the child of unhealed parents.
Yeah.
They didn't know who they
Well,
were.
and you're the child of children.
Exactly. Which is probably why I waited so long, because I had my first son. I gave birth to him a month before I turned 30. And my second one right before my 32nd birthday.
Yeah. And that's better. But I'm telling you, that's not.
It wasn't perfect.
It's not. Yeah. It's not even good enough. We are capable. I know we are, if we're healthy. And we're starting to see a little bit of this because we're starting to see people, women especially, being able to have children into their early to mid 40s.
Right.
But there's a lot of problems with that at our current state of health. But what I see, one of these huge things that's going to be changing is our lifespan is going to be extended. We're going to be having children much later, and we're going to be fertile much later and very healthy much later. So this will not be a concern.
Well, I believe that.
This is going to be one of the huge things. They just corrected me. At some point in the not too distant future, I'm not talking about tomorrow or next week, but within a couple of decades, they're saying, is we will basically be able to have children whenever we want, as long as we're still on the planet. So that tells me that if we decide, if there's a reason or a want, we could have children right up until into our senior years if we wanted. But we won't be the same as we are now. We'll be very young in mind, body, and spirit, right through our life.
Well,
They're talking about lifespans that are going to be, and I'm talking about healthy lifespans.
Right.
To be over 100 years old. It will it's like when they talk about in the Bible, they talked about people in the Bible that were like 150, some 200 years old.
Hmm.
And that's what we're going to go back to, because that is when the human body is properly supported, that's what it can do.
Absolutely. I actually had a dream. It was 2 weeks after I met my partner, and he'll be my third husband. But 2 weeks after I met him, I had a dream that it was after his 100th birthday, which would have made me 109, that I just looked at him and said, you know what, baby, I'm tired and I'm ready to go home now. And the funny thing is, he moved in, I want to say 11 months afterwards. And 2 weeks after he moved in, he had the same exact dream. And
Wow, I
we
love that.
went in each other's arms, and he woke up upset by it. And I said, why are you upset? Do you not see the beauty of that dream?
Yeah,
Like, we got to
exactly.
be 50 years past where we are now, healthy and
Having
doing
that life together. Yeah.
exactly and experiencing it all together. And it's so funny you say 35. Do you know, after my awakening, I was meditating and I was asked a question, and it said, if I had to pick an age that I felt in my spirit, what age would I pick? And mind you,
35.
I said 35. And
Yeah.
after that, every person that came to me for healing or would just come was right around that 35 age mark.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me at all.
Very interesting. Now,
Well,
Laura,
it's also there's a lot of things about that. We could have a whole conversation.
well, who knows?
I
Maybe
feel
after
like
this
I
one we
kind of
will.
lost the question somewhere.
That's okay. I got more for you. So,
Okay.
so Laura, you work with some smart soul aware people who are high functioning on the outside, but quietly they are struggling. What's the energetic pattern you see most often in these individuals? The root wound or the karmic loop that keeps them achieving externally while feeling empty internally? And what's that first shift that needs to happen for them to stop self-abandoning?
Wow, that's a complex question. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Number one, not that I primarily work with women for obvious reasons. Do I
Mhm.
have to explain this?
That's up to you. This is your show now.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm happy that this is now changing, but for decades and decades, let me frame it for you. I'm 64, so I've been around for a while. Men, when it came to anything spiritual or self growth, there was very few men involved. And usually the men were very much older because
Mhm.
they, we talk about middle age. I'm talking about the men that used to get involved in this kind of thing were more in their 60s, 70s, and sometimes 80s.
Wow.
I'm happy to know that that is changing now. Number one, more and more men are starting to awaken and be open to this self growth and this spirituality. And number two, it's happening at a younger and younger age, which I think is amazing.
Yes.
Okay. That's wonderful. Now I've lost the question where I was going to go with this. Oh, women, yes, yes. What is happening when you look great on the outside and things aren't so good in the inside? The reason being, this is why I went the male female thing, especially with women. In this case, women are taught basically from the second that they pop out that they are supposed to be caregivers of everyone else
Hmm.
and their needs don't matter.
Sadly, yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
So if you look at this energy and this psychology, this is why so many women are such powerful healers and caregivers and advocates, is because they're taught from the very beginning that they're supposed to be looking after everyone else.
Right.
And the reason that a lot of women are totally burnt out or dying inside is because they also have the totally ingrained belief that they don't matter. Their health, their wellness, they have to look after everyone else before themselves.
Yeah,
And this,
secondary. Hmm.
Yeah, they're secondary to everything. They're secondary to men. They're secondary to their children. They're secondary to their friends.
Hmm.
Everybody to their like their extended family. This is why you often find that even in families of multiple siblings, the ones who always end up having to look after aging parents, guess who they are?
Right. The girls, the
The
daughters.
girls.
Hmm.
Yeah, and usually the oldest or the second oldest are the ones that are having to look after the parents. And the brothers are just ta 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 ta, and they're taking up all the work. Now, so this is why. Now, if we want to look at the male side, it's somewhat similar, but for different reasons. Men have been taught from the day that they popped out that they're not supposed to show any emotion. They're supposed to take on everything. They're supposed to look after everybody
From a
else.
provider standpoint.
Exactly, from
Right.
a provider protector
Hmm.
standpoint. So my God, they don't count inside.
Right.
They don't have to get their needs met. They're so busy meeting everybody else's needs for in terms of providing and protecting. Okay. So actually they're just as bad as we are. It's a little bit different.
Right.
But the same things apply. They're even worse at it. Men are even harder in some ways to teach to how to look after and nurture themselves,
Right.
because this is something totally foreign to most men that they have never been taught.
Wow.
So at least women know how to take care of people because they've been taught, they've been shown, and they've been doing it for years, taking care of others. So the only thing that you have to switch in women is switching them over to take those talents and use them on themselves.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So it is still difficult, but it's men is a whole other thing because they don't even know how to do it.
Yeah. You have to get them to flip that switch.
Yeah,
I have
you
to
have to get
say,
into the switch.
my 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 mother-in-law, my would have been mother-in-law who recently passed, she had the two boys, and between him and his brother, they are just the most amazing human beings. Like, they are both strong nurturers, caring. It's like everything that was going on, and they're still looking after. They knew I'd hurt my back, and they're still
Mhm.
coming after me. Are you okay? Are you okay? I'm like, this today's not about me. It's about you guys. It's just they have that ingrained in them. She did such a wonderful job of
I was going to
raising
say,
very
yeah,
aware young men.
men. Yes. Yeah, and that's highly unusual. Because I have through the course of my life, I have had experiences with men who have been raised in all male families,
Hmm.
and I have had men in my life that were raised in families where they had female siblings.
Hmm.
And the difference between those two things is like night and day. Unless unless these men have gone on and done the work themselves.
Right.
Okay. Which is it's a much different thing. Now there's always exceptions because you just stated an exception. Your guy and his bro. Okay. So there are always exceptions, and usually that's because they've had an incredibly strong, loving mother involved. Okay.
Which she
I'm
was.
just curious. Did she raise the boys on her own?
For a couple of years until she met her husband. And
Oh,
then
okay.
they had him in their lives, and he was a
Okay.
very, very, very strong role model for both of them as well.
I was going to say he must have been a very good role model for
He
them.
It's just amazing. He's come to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been beautiful, the experiences I've had, because he'll come to me and he gave me all this information that I remember going to my boyfriend and his mom with, and they're like, "How would you know that?" And I'm like, he spoke to me." Like,
Oh, so he's fast as well.
oh yes, he passed about 10 years
Yeah.
ago. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the dynamic. But you see, what we need to do, and what's starting to happen now is instead of these being isolated incidents where you have mothers and fathers who are able to give both of these things to both their children.
Right.
And the other side of that too is there's a lot of women that have been brought up that haven't been taught self-reliance or strength, how to be a woman and how to be strong.
Right.
There's a lot of strong women out there, but unfortunately a lot of them have been, and this has a lot to do with what profession you're in. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I call it the queen bee syndrome. And what it ends up being is women primarily who've been, I'll say, raised in the workforce in with a lot of in traditionally male roles have been taught how to be a man.
Right.
They don't know how to be strong and still be a woman. They believe that in order to be strong and competitive, they have to become men. And this is over and over again reinforced in our society, in our Western society. So this is why you have so many women becoming so emasculated in terms of that's the only way they know how to be strong.
Right. That's the only, it's the only strength that they recognize. Exactly.
Yeah, it's the only strength that they recognize. So, there's problems in both genders, and now there's so many, well, there always has been blended genders, but I think that's a whole nother topic. But I believe that the amount of if you go back into indigenous cultures, I think one of the North American tribes actually believed, I can't remember if it was, they believed way back when in either 5 or 7 genders.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, not just 2. Okay. So it's been around for a long time, but I think the rise in what we're seeing and the way people are coming in with different identifications
Right.
is because of the change in energy too.
Oh, absolutely.
Like they've always been there to a certain degree, but I think not only are we becoming more aware of them, but I actually think there's more people being born into the world in different states of gender identity. So that's a whole nother topic again. But yeah, so that's the thing. And what it comes down to, if you really want to find your path and your purpose, you really have to connect deeply to your authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest, I know it sounds simplistic, but honestly, the biggest path to that, the most direct path to that is self-care.
Mm-hmm. I say it all the time. Self-love is the truth right there.
Well, I consider self-love as being part of self-care.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And everything else engenders that in you. And that's where real and that okay, there's self-love, there's resilience, there's physical health, there's mental health, and there's emotional health.
Mm-hmm.
And once you have all those 5, it's amazing we have 5 fingers and there's 5 of those.
I love.
And
Yeah,
also,
I always
if you
love
want to
those.
get technical, 5 in numerology is the vibration of change.
Speaking
It's
my
not only
language.
the vibration of change, it's also the vibration of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not only talking about freedom from, but we are also talking about freedom to.
Right.
Okay. So all those things bring this together. So that is the answer to a very multi-level question. It all, this is what I love about working with spirit, because it's all about getting to the root issues.
Exactly.
The problem I have with some of the traditional therapies and things like that, and even some of the what would be called alternative therapies, they really are more of a band-aid solution. They're treating symptoms as opposed to getting down to the root and building from there.
Exactly.
And I always talk about building from the inside out, because if you're working from the outside in, forget it.
You'll never get
Okay.
anywhere. Mm-hmm.
You'll never, well, yeah, your
It's
life will get a bit better
a little slowly.
because you're putting band-aids on things, but long term, no.
You have to,
It's
you
not
have to, you have to start. Just, I'm a Reiki master, and I believe
yeah.
you got to start with those chakras. You got to unblock them, and you got to start from the root and work your way up.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Now, Laura, I'd like to shift into something really sacred here. You describe your mediumship work as never about performance. It's about healing, connection, and peace. Now,
Yes.
having lost your own soulmate, which I can't even imagine, you bring profound compassion to bridging worlds. Can you share what happens energetically in the room when someone receives a message from a loved one who's transitioned? And what's the most common misconception people have about connecting with those on the other side?
Well, the most profound thing in the room, and this is why I was shown and taught to only pretty much when I do my mediumship sessions, they're always done in a group.
Mm-hmm.
I have somebody host them in their home, okay, because that provides a loving and safe container for people. And I do messages for healing people. I have both a contract with the living and I have a contract with the people on the other side. My contract with the people living is to help them heal from their grief.
Mm-hmm.
And my contract with the people on the other side is to get their messages through. I think the best way to tell you this is probably the thing that I've seen most in the room is not only the healing of the person who the message is directed at, who it's for, but the profound healing for everyone in the room.
Right.
It's just amazing to see the energy shifts. I'm going to give you an example because this is really. There was one time when a young man came through. He was only in his early 20s,
Mm-hmm.
and he had lost his life in a motorcycle accident.
Wow.
And let me preface this by saying his family was not even in the room, but there was a gal in the room who was friends with his family. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And she was being asked to be a messenger, and we can go into that more if you want later. But he came in because he desperately wanted to explain to his family what really happened. Because of the fact his motorcycle accident was a single vehicle accident, he'd swerved off the road and ran into a tree and was killed. And because of the circumstances of the accident, the police ruled it a suicide.
Wow.
Well, because there was no attempt for him to stop.
Right.
Okay. It looked like he had just pointed his bike off
Directly at the tree.
directly at this tree and drove right into it.
Right.
Okay. So I'm not blaming it's, not a fault of the police. That was the evidence.
Right.
And this profoundly affected his whole family and all his friends. And he had a younger brother who was now the problem, especially with young males, is suicide is contagious.
Right.
Okay. He had a younger brother that was suicidal. He had a friend that was his best friend that was suicidal. And his whole family was just crushed. Okay.
Right.
This is probably the worst thing a family can hear. And he came through to tell his story because it wasn't true. What he came in to take responsibility for causing his own death, but it was a very clear message that it was not suicide and it was not intentional. Because what had happened is he'd been excuse me, very sick.
Mm-hmm.
And he had taken a bunch of over-the-counter cold and cough medicines.
Oh.
And he knew he shouldn't be driving his motorcycle because he had all this in him, but he wanted to get home because he was sick.
Right.
And he literally fell asleep at the wheel.
Oh my gosh.
And so this is why there was no skid marks, no evidence that he had tried to avoid the accident. He had simply fallen asleep on his bike
Right.
and swerved off the road and ran into the street. So he wanted to take responsibility for causing the accident and his own foolishness, but he was very clear that he had not intended on taking his own life. And this profoundly changed his family and everyone around him, because this wonderful gal that was actually in the session took this information to his family.
Oh.
And it healed so many people. And not only that, it healed everybody in the room.
Right.
And it also made people want to question things. Like, this is another thing. We are way too quick to take things at face value without really looking into them.
Right.
Okay. Because, look how easily this happened. And this could something like this could happen to somebody else. And
Exactly.
it couldn't, it could not be true. So, can you just pause for 1 second? I'm sorry.
Sure. Okay.
So you can see how incredibly healing these messages can be, because there's other kinds of mediums out there. They call them like evidentiary mediums. And these are the people you see on TV, and they're all about giving a lot of details about the person and a lot of their work, and I'm not poo-pooing it because it's important work as well, but a lot of their work is basically proving to people that life goes on and people, about the other side.
Right.
I don't care if you believe that life goes on well, I care, but the primary mission for my mediumship is to help people heal.
Right.
Because so many people have so much regret and guilt and all kinds of things, and sometimes anger, because sometimes people had really horrible relationships with their people while they were here.
Right.
And they don't realize that when people cross on the other side, they leave all that humanness here. And contacting somebody on the other side is totally different than dealing with them in the way that you would deal with them if they were still here. Because
Absolutely.
all that anger, that angst, that all that stuff is gone.
Yeah, they don't feel that.
And only the love survives.
Mm-hmm.
So that in itself to some people is just so incredibly powerful healing. So that's what I do. That's how I use my mediumship. And it's incredible. And you know what I find really interesting is occasionally, because not everybody in the circle is guaranteed that somebody's going to come to speak with them.
Right.
Because that's the other thing people don't understand about mediums. A medium is an antenna. We don't go out and grab people and say, hey, come talk to us.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that.
It doesn't work that way. So occasionally, often there is one, and sometimes, very rarely, two people who won't have a message that's directed directly to them.
Right.
But you know what I find interesting is usually after the session, those people are the people that come up to me and they're like, wow, I got so much out of this listening to all these other messages for the other people. Like, a lot of times they are so profound. They are even more profoundly changed in some cases than some of the people that actually got a message.
I believe, it's funny because I've channeled without even intending to. Like, I had a friend who one day just called me and said, and it was a Friday morning. He's like, what are you doing today? I need to see you. I was like, nothing. He flew from Atlanta that same day. I picked him up from the airport, 5:00 that night, took him back to my apartment, and we're just sitting outside in the balcony. And he just started talking about things that were bothering him and things he was going through. And all of a sudden he goes, I just feel like there's no one here for me and that I'm all alone. As soon as he said that, I saw 2 orbs right behind him. Yeah. And I looked at him and I go, you are not alone. And no sooner did I say that, one of them came right through me, and it turned out to be his dad. And as soon as I opened his mouth, he was like, Dad, and just started hugging on me. They communicated for a while, and then his father left and the other one came in, and it was his cousin. And he just recognized who they were right away as I was speaking. And it's like, then the next time I saw him, he was like, "You have any messages for him?" It doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And, you have to be careful too, because uh, I just have to say this because it's one of my pet peeves.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people that are very new and start getting messages or they all of a sudden get in touch with their psychic abilities or their mediumship abilities,
Hmm.
and they go around doing what I call guerrilla readings. Like they'll literally walk by somebody on the street and they'll pick up something for them and they'll grab them and they'll just start blah, 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 blah.
That's
And that
intrusive.
is, oh my God, that is so not an integrity. Okay.
I don't even think
You
our
have
guides
to
want
have,
us to do that. They used to have to
yeah,
ask for permission. And I do the
yeah.
same
I was just
thing.
going to say, at the very least, because I have had that happen. It doesn't happen to me very often because my guides are my gateway.
Hmm.
And of course, there are huge, and I have a huge integrity myself, and they have huge integrity.
Hmm.
So if I get a message like out of the blue when I'm not in a session of some description, I know that it's extremely important.
Right.
So I pay attention. And if I get something for somebody, the first thing I say is, well, I don't even know. I probably would never walk up to a stranger unless I was absolutely guided to them.
Right.
But this is usually for people that I know. But even with people that I know, I would always still ask permission.
Always.
Always,
Absolutely.
you know.
Absolutely.
And if they say no, then the answer is no.
You have to, exactly. You have
Um,
to, not everybody's that open and receptive to it. Like they just,
no.
yes.
And
And you have
some
to
people
respect
aren't
that.
ready.
Right.
Some people aren't ready. And I've actually gotten messages for somebody and asked them, and they've said no.
Hmm.
And I said, fine. And then days later, they've come back to me and they go, do you remember what it was? Which I find really cute because as soon as they say that, of course, it triggers in me the remembrance of whatever it was
Right.
because it was important, and there it is.
Right.
So I never worry about delivering or not delivering a message because I know that everything happens in divine timing.
I have that experience during my Reiki sessions. It's like, and it doesn't
Yes.
happen for everyone, but every now and then a message will come through for someone. And, I work with my eyes closed and
Hmm.
I don't get a lot of visions or anything, but all of a sudden somebody will just show themselves to me. And my spirit guides, they know I'm a hard-headed kind of person. I'm that person. I get my messages like, you want my attention, you got to come to me in threes, or else I don't believe it's for me. So the last session, I remember I was working on a client, and it was an older gentleman, and he came to me in the vision at first. And then I saw him in a wheelchair, and then I saw him standing up, and then I felt his energy right next to me, and he kept like telling me, like, tell her I'm here, tell her I'm here, tell her I'm here. And then finally I was like, in my head, I'm thinking, well, if you know my guides, I need my nudges in three. I felt like right on me. I was like, all right. And so I said to her, okay, I've got a message here. If you want to hear, she was like, oh, please, please, please. And of course I told
Yeah.
her, and it turned out it was her grandfather. And we got
Yeah.
and she got her message. And then she showed me the picture of him afterwards. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that was definitely him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It's an interesting life. That's all I can say.
I love it. It is very interesting, and it's taken some time to get used to, like I said, for me, I'm at 55 for when things started happening. I'm like, is this really happening? Which is why I think they realize for me, come to me in threes. Even for me starting a podcast, I had to hear it 3 times for me to go, okay, I'll start a podcast. That's how I
I love it.
trust.
I love it. I love it.
Oh, well, oh my God. Laura, this was beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Laura, for your wisdom, your vulnerability, and for holding such sacred space with us today. You truly, truly are a gift.
Oh, thank you. I've truly enjoyed it. I don't like to play favorites, but I do quite a bit. Quite a few interviews, And I do have my favorites, and you've become one of my favorites. So that's awesome.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Did you hear that, guys? I only did hear that once. Well, to everyone that's listening, if Laura's words resonated with you today, I want you to do 3 things. First, visit Laura at Spirit Speaks to Me. That's www.spiritspeaks2.me to explore her spiritual counseling, intuitive coaching, and mediumship sessions. Laura works one-on-one and in group settings. Like she said, she likes the group settings. And if you're feeling that pull towards deeper clarity, healing, or connection with spirit, she's the real deal. Second, if this conversation stirs something in you, if you felt seen, heard, or called forward, please hit that subscribe button so that you will just not miss an episode. We are building a community of soul-led seekers who are done playing small, and I want you all to be a part of it. And third, drop a comment below and let me know, what was your biggest takeaway from today's conversation? Was it the distinction between fear voice and soul voice? The permission to honor your dark nights as sacred initiations? Or maybe Laura's reminder that your loved ones are never truly gone? I read every single comment, and I want to hear what landed for you. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, someone who's high functioning but secretly struggling, someone navigating a major life transition, or someone who's spiritually hungry and ready for real answers, please share this episode with them, because you never know whose life you might change with one simple share. So, to my beautiful community, thank you for showing up, for doing the inner work, for choosing courage over comfort. You are not alone on this journey. Your authenticity matters. Your spiritual gifts matter. You matter. Until next time, keep awakening, keep rising, and keep trusting the whispers of your soul. I'm Jessica, and this is Awaken Your Authentic Self.